20 minutes or so, let's talk to social and political commentator James Melville. Welcome back to the show, James.
Hi, Kevin, you well?
I'm pretty good, yeah, thanks, mate. Let's talk, I want to do a couple of different type of stories with you. The first one is about Angela Rayner. And then I want to talk to you about the recurring story that keeps on happening, the ludicrous empty gesture that Premier League footballers are now going to resume taking the knee in the Premier League, the Football Association's bid to beat racism. Well, they've been doing it for about 4 or 5 years now. You know, there's still no black managers in the Premier League. I haven't seen a black referee for a long, long time. So I'm not sure that racism in football has been stamped out by footballers taking the knee, and yet this virtue signalling nonsense will be resumed this weekend. I'll see it myself when I see my team Fulham beat Arsenal at least 4-0, I would imagine. But we'll talk about that in a minute, because I want first of all to talk about the kind of sickening hypocrisy that is so common in Westminster. So, you will recall during her Labour opposition firebrand days, Angela Rayner campaigned for ministers who had to step down or got sacked for breaking the ministerial code not to get payoffs. She campaigned for that, very vocal. It was corrupt, you can't do that, don't take the money, you've broken the code. Well, guess what? Guess what? Our shamed, disgraced former Deputy Prime Minister and former Housing Secretary has just, who, by the way, was forced to step down for breaking the said ministerial code, has just accepted her £17,000 ministerial payoff. Doesn't that sum our politicians up? Does it? She's so hypocritical, it makes you want to puke.
Oh, it's terrible. You know, there's almost a thing with the Tories. Everyone expected the Tories to behave badly. You know, that was almost baked in. But with Labour, they said we're going to clean up this mess. And I think the sanctimonious hypocrisy is probably the #1 reason why Labour are tanking in the polls, and Starmer's got the worst approval records into modern living. And so with Rayner, she is just an encapsulation of all of this hypocrisy. You know, they sweep into power, massive majorities, all about transparency, it's all about integrity, it's all about effectively their own version of draining the swamp. But they've done none of those things. They're just feathering their own nests. And who's paying for it? Us, the taxpayer, the suckers as always, who basically allow them their lavish lifestyles of ministerial cars, they're paying the energy in their second homes, strutting off to various climate conferences and the next G7 or G20 or whatever it might be. And this is the thing that most people are concerned about. We've got a cost of living crisis that's been going on for half a decade. People are really struggling to make ends meet, but we're still paying our taxes. And we're paying our taxes to that lot to strut around with their lavish lifestyle. And when they're not good enough, or they're busted and found out, they still get more payoffs. And what will happen beyond that, they end up getting great jobs, working for their cronies, their donors, and then they come back again into power and do it all again. And so whether it's the Tories or whether it's Labour, it's two cheeks in the same backside, and that is why the public are utterly sick of them. And that is why Reform, on the latest polls, look like they're going to clean up in the next election. Reform have got their flaws, but people don't care anymore because they have had enough of these two parties. The sad thing about this, though, we've got 4 more years of this nonsense.
Yeah, exactly right. And but Comrade Rayner, I mean, she, as I said in my monologue earlier in the show, she's like the hypocrite's hypocrite, isn't she? I mean, there's this scion of socialism and left-wing politics for the people, busy buying herself an 800 grand seaside flat in Hove and then dodging out of paying the correct stamp duty on it and then lying through her teeth to try and get off the hook, then effectively gets sacked. I mean, she was, as they say in politics, resigned. She was told, look, you're going to have to step down, which she did, and then accepts the payoffs that she campaigned to stamp out. She said ministers who have to leave their jobs for breaking the ministerial code should not get ministerial payoffs. I utterly agree with her. And yet when it was her turn, suddenly she forgot all about her campaign and took the 17 grand. I say to hell with her.
It's ridiculous. I mean, this is the thing. If you look through their back statements, so when they're in opposition, whether it's on social media or statements made at conference, whatever, I mean, there is like a treasure trove of the very statements they're now doing themselves. And it's just ludicrous. And this is why people really dislike this government, because we're willing to give them a chance. And it wasn't this sort of thing when Blair came in '97 that, you know, people wanted to change and look like government in waiting and were actually refreshed by the idea of Labour back then. Now it was with a heavy heart because people were just sick of the Tories. But I thought, we'll give them a chance. You know, there's a lot of problems. They might solve a few. But actually what they've done is two terrible things. Firstly, they've made a lot of the problems worse. You know, look at the economy, it's tanking. So they basically create a situation, make it worse, come up with solutions, make it worse. In digital ID, net zero, you name it, they've done it. Punish farmers, small businesses, a budget that tanked, and we've had over 200,000, job losses, and over 6,000 farming-related businesses have gone under. So they're not doing a very good job on that. The second aspect is back to the hypocrisy, wrapped around in that pole-faced, sanctimonious manner where they're always speaking to us or lecturing to us like we're somehow naughty school children. It's all our fault, apparently. It's not. It's theirs. You know, they are hypocrites. They're out of their depth. They're tanking the economy. They're destroying industry. There's no growth strategy. But even then, people might go, well, at least offer some hope in the long term, but there's none of that. Yeah. And all we've got left is a bunch of politicians who are on the front bench that, quite frankly, give off the impression that they're apprentice candidates who are about to be fired. Yeah. And so they're so out of their depth. But the final aspect that people look at and are appalled by is these individuals give off the impression, wrapped around their virtue con, they give off the impression that they're feathering their own nest or they're doing things for their own cronies. They don't care about what's really happening in the northwest or the northeast or the central belt of Scotland, where these areas have been hollowed out for decades. They're not doing anything about that. Yeah. Instead, what they're doing is they are blaming everyone else for actually the problems that they're making much, much worse. It's been a terrible, terrible 15, 16 months. Probably the worst government I've ever seen. And that is largely because I can't stand that pole-faced hypocrisy.
Yeah, I agree with you. And people are disgusted by this. And I'll guarantee you, they're just leaving it for a few months. They'll bring Angela back. And she'll put her snout into the trough once again.
After she's gone on strictly.
They'll bring her back into the cabinet. They will. They just will. To have to leave your job in disgrace in politics, it's a matter of weeks or months before you come back. It's a disgrace and it's disgusting. Now, let's move on to the other story I wanted to talk to you about because it's getting a lot of heat. For some reason, I can't quite work out. I think it might be because it's Black History Month. Nothing wrong with that. The Premier League footballers, for the first time this season, will this weekend resume their practice of taking the knee in order to take a stand against racism. I'm a regular footballer attender myself, and I know that the fans just hate it. They don't hate the concept. They don't hate the idea of standing up to racism. They hate the crashing, ludicrous emptiness of the gesture that has achieved the square root of sod all in stamping out racism in football. As I said earlier, there are no managers of colour, black colours, ethnic managers in the Premier League, I think I'm right in saying. I haven't seen a black referee probably ever. Certainly not in the Premier League. So, I'm sure there are a lot of players of colour, but in terms of managers, coaches, referees, you don't see many of them. So I don't think it has stamped out racism in football. And I think what appalls football fans is, why are you assailing us with this nonsensical virtue signalling that actually started when George Floyd got killed in 2020? What has it done to stamp out racism, this nonsense. Don't virtue signal. Don't waste our time. It's ridiculous, isn't it?
It is. We all agree on racism has no place in any form of society.
Of course not.
Whatever it is, but I think the other side of it is that actually football, in the late 70s, early 80s, we're actually pioneers for enabling black players to come through. I mean, West Bromwich Albion were a perfect example of that in the late 70s and 80s, and then more and more players came through, and it added so much to our game. And I think English football were pioneers of that. But I think there's been elements, not just in the UK, but overseas. It's actually worse, obviously, in terms of racist chants, and that deserves to be called out. And I think the authorities, should be naming and shaming any individual who does that. That's the main thing. Stop the individuals who are doing it. Let the authorities deal with it. But to actually have this sort of symbolic gesture that is empty, and if anyone dares to criticise that, then this is how ludicrous we are right now in terms of the kind of cancel culture. If anyone dares to go, why are they doing that? What purpose is it serving? Then they're accused of being a racist.
Being racist themselves, exactly.
Yeah, it's just nonsense. It's like people who go on about net zero and having problems with that. They're accused of being a climate change denier. Or it's people, for instance, who criticised lockdowns. They were somehow COVIDiots. And we have this pattern. Another one at the moment as well, for instance, is questioning illegal migration. Well, you must be a racist.
Racist, yeah. I mean, look, James, I go to football a lot. I mean, okay, I'd support the most middle-class club in all of football, Fulham, yeah. Yeah, do you remember when Roy Keane said, I can't believe it, at Old Trafford now they're selling wine. We at Craven Cottage said, well, we've got a wine list.
I've been there many times.
Yeah, I mean, but what I'm saying in a long-winded way, and I do go to a few away games as well. I don't see any racism from the fans. I don't see any racism. Very, very acerbic chants, but not racist chants. So I'm not quite sure what this is aimed at. It's called No Room for Racism. And I'm not sure who it's aimed at. Who is it supposed to be aimed at? I'll tell you who it should be aimed at. The Football Association and football clubs, who should begin to consider people of colour to be managers, to be coaches, to be referees. How about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is the whole thing. It's about pathways from, ethnic minorities coming through any industry, and football, as I said, back in the sort of 70s, 80s, we're pretty good at that. I agree there's more that can be done, especially in managerial and coaching point of views, and certainly that needs to be looked at. But I've always had, as someone who is involved in campaigns, it's part of what I do, amongst many other things. Campaigns have a purpose. They've got purpose. If there's some action, if there's actually some deliverables and some outcomes, and they actually achieve something. Otherwise, it just looks empty. And it's an important debate, but the gesture is empty. And there's far too many gestures floating around our, society, public affairs and politics right now. We should get rid of effectively the virtue signalling and focus on real virtue. Yeah. That's actually making a difference.
Yeah, exactly right. Because as you quite rightly say, the No Room for Racism campaign in terms of the Football Association, it seems to me, begins and ends with players taking the knee before the match. That's it. I don't see any other evidence that anything is going on in stamping out racism in the game. And as I said, I don't believe, there's a few bad apples, I'm sure, but I don't believe for a second that significant numbers of fans are racist. They're not. The chants are never racist. Within the echelons of football itself, the higher management levels of football, it seems to me that is pretty white, uptight and out of sight. You don't see many people of colour there. That's what they should be doing, not just taking the knee pointlessly.
Completely. I mean, Keir Starmer, remember, he took the knee with Angela Rayner.
How can we forget?
I mean, the warning signs were there.
Yeah.
It was, the king virtue signalling himself. But it's okay for him and Angela Rayner and many others to do all their virtue bits. Yeah. There's another one every single week. But actually what people want, it comes back to that point of saying, real virtue is actually making a difference to people, doing something about it. And actually, in the case of Starmer, he's making people's lives worse.
Yeah.
You know, people are losing their jobs, businesses are going under, and they're taking freebies and the rest of it. So yeah, do your virtue bit, get on your knee, fine. But actually what people want, when the punters want out there, is to make a difference to their lives, you know, and actually let people get on with their lives and also improve the many, many things that are wrong in this country. But instead what we do is just dance around issues and instead indulge in loads of aspects of virtue signaling.
Virtue signalling, and when they take the knee before the games on Saturday, you'll find that a lot of the fans will jeer and boo, and the idiots from the FA say, "You see, they're racist." No, they're jeering and booing because they can see a pointless, empty gesture when they know it, and when they know one when they see one, and that's what it will be about. Absolutely ridiculous. I don't know why they're bothering, but hey ho, we live in a virtue signalling world, don't we? James, really good to talk to you again. Come on again soon. That was James Melville, social and political commentator, talking about Angela Rayner, the hypocrite's hypocrite. What do you think about that? Because we're taking